Hello and welcome to Voice of Australia. It's day one of the election campaign and the promises are coming in thick and fast. Tony Abbott headed straight to the Prime Minister's home state of Queensland to officially kick off his appeal to voters, vowing to scrap the carbon tax if he wins. Kevin Rudd, meanwhile, was rallying his cabinet in Canberra. We'll hear more about that meeting a little later from Bill Shorten. We've also found out some of the sugar hit from the PM's return to the top job has worn off. The latest Newspoll has support for Kevin Rudd as preferred PM, still higher than Tony Abbott, but on the wane. Martin O'Shannessy is the CEO of Newspoll and joins our panel, Joe Hildebrand from the Daily Telegraph and National Economics Editor Jessica Irvine. Thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Martin, Kevin Rudd's popularity down slightly, dissatisfaction up sharply. Is it too early to say if this is the start of a trend?
No, but it certainly isn't too early to say that the honeymoon's over and we're right into the campaign. And we now see the Prime Minister with a negative satisfaction rating, where he was when he left off as Prime Minister last time. So, and I think he's being judged probably by his own voters on the PNG solution. A lot of people with left-leaning tendencies, left politics in Labor, will still be voting Labor but under protest, and I think that's what we're seeing here.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's sort of, he's staying where he was. We're seeing the numbers fall off him as preferred PM, but they're also falling off the primary of the coalition. They're falling off the Green vote as well. But Labor's just not picking them up either in the primary or the 2PP. It's very weird, isn't it?
Indeed, and what we're seeing here is there is some vote crossing across to others in a parked vote, and we saw others with 6.6% at the election. They're on 10 right now. I think they'll be, between those two numbers come the election.
Is it the nutbags like Clive Palmer and is it Bob Catter even, who actually is incredibly responsible compared to Clive Palmer?
Well, I've had a look at those numbers, and over the last 3 or 4 polls, the numbers for Clive Palmer are pretty close to Asterix. Focused in Queensland somewhat. Bob Catter's actually going to do better than that, and has done better in the past and run everywhere.
He's got all those defections in Queensland.
Yeah, he's showing up better, but in reality, you're going to see the coalition pulling in most of those preferences back to 52. We've had that twice in a row. That's the kind of number you win an election on if you're going to win, in a fairly hard-fought battle.
Martin, it's been sort of observed that this is looking like quite a presidential campaign, like the focus is on Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd, and yet you've still got Kevin Rudd as preferred PM over Tony Abbott. Why don't people like Tony Abbott?
Good question. Tony Abbott, of course, put himself into a position on a lot of social issues when he was opposition leader and when he was health minister. So I think that stayed with him. And what we're seeing, though, is I think you'll see Labor trying to make it presidential and the coalition talking about policy and economic management. And in fact, we're seeing that talked up at the moment because Kevin Rudd does have a little edge in popularity, though that's quickly fading, we see today. But Tony Abbott has been one of those disliked but well-respected managers, a bit in the John Howard mould.
And you don't actually think that's going to improve from him? Will we ever see Tony Abbott preferred over Kevin before this election, or can we...
That's hard to tell. I mean, what we do see is Tony Abbott's rating just has been locked in concrete. Back to June, 56 dissatisfied for 4 polls in a row, 35 satisfied. Those numbers don't move at all, and in fact it's becoming one of the indicators for the poll. If we've got a good one, it means that Tony Abbott hasn't moved, and everything that moves around is something we've found as a result of changes in the real world.
It's interesting, Peter Costello is making the point in tomorrow's Telegraph that Kevin Rudd has to go out of his way to not talk about the party he leads under any circumstances, whereas Tony Abbott has to go out of his way to remind everyone else that it's not just him, and that Malcolm Turnbull's standing just behind him to keep an eye on him.
I think that's a pretty acute observation. I'm not sure he'd be bringing Malcolm into it, but the idea of appealing as the party of good management. And our most recent management poll, our issues poll, shows that where Labor fell down was in management. And Kevin Rudd's great achievement as a campaigner was to equal John Howard on economic management to win 2007. But right now, earlier this year, not only had they lost that, but on the areas where Labor's traditionally good, health and Medicare, education, the coalition was catching up because Labor had really harmed their their management credentials. And I think that's why the Coalition's going to campaign there, and Labor's going to campaign on personality.
Can you actually win a campaign if you're not seen as the best manager of the economy?
I really don't think so.
No.
And I think the other thing that you can't do is actually hurt people in the hip pocket nerve. Now, John Howard, a good manager, the economy in a great state, but work choices, according to our surveys, and we did 3 of them, hurt around a third of the population, or they said it did. As a result, I think that was part of the downfall of John Howard. And certainly, when you look at the way Kevin Rudd campaigned, it was to equal Howard on management. And when you do that, then you can win.
I also think that I think that people lie to pollsters as well. I think people always overstate how important health and education is to them because they think that they should say it. Because quite frankly, if the polls keep coming back about how important people find health and education, if they were telling the truth, the Liberals would never win an election, ever.
Well, now you're in the area of opinion, Joe, which is not my business, although we just ask other people. I don't necessarily have
but Labor is always determined to say, what are the most important issues? People say, health and education. And you say, all right, and who do you think is best qualified to manage those issues? They go, the Labor Party. And they say, who do you vote for? The Liberals.
Mostly. But this time around, if you look at the numbers, look at our last poll on that topic, the Coalition was coming close, and it was Labor falling back to a level that they would normally not go down to.
Okay, we've got to wind it up there. Martin, thank you very much for coming in. Good to chat.